Good evening. At this time, I'll call to order the regularly scheduled committee meeting for the Village of Midlothian, Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, at 7 p.m. Roll call, please. Clerk Moscow.
Trustee Kami?
Here.
Trustee Crowley?
Here.
Trustee Hilly?
Here.
Trustee Ivan?
Here.
Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Killily?
Here.
Mayor LaRue?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'll open the floor to public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Well, then I'll close the floor to public comment. Moving on to trustee business, Trustee Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things tonight. As I had explained a couple weeks ago, I am now sending the next section of the draft of the employee manual for everyone's review and comment. I'd like to thank trustees Peavy and Crowley for reviewing it and providing me their feedback. I am in agreement with what they have suggested, which are minor in detail. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to make those changes, bring this before the board next week for approval. However, I did skip one area. In this section, there is a section on sexual harassment, and I was informed that the village actually has a sexual harassment policy that was passed January 10th, 2018. And my question for the board is whether or not we want to insert the currently accepted prohibiting sexual harassment policy of the village into the section, or do we want to keep the proposed draft sexual harassment policy that is in the document that I provided? That's probably the biggest question that I have in this section. And if there's any comments, I'm open to hearing whatever you think.
Were you able to compare this policy to our policy?
You know, I did, but I feel like I need to go through it one more time just to make sure. And actually, Kathy, Trustee Caveney raised that and said, if they're similar, is one better than the other? And so I'm going to ask the attorney, any thoughts?
Yeah, my recollection is that when the village board passed the sexual harassment policy, it was based upon the model policy from the municipal league who sent us that. That was just for the purpose of getting into compliance before the year ended. In other words, here, pass this, you comply with the law. Reviewing that and having actually having to enforce the sexual harassment policy within the village, I have determined that it is woefully short of details and flexibility, as well as following it's a bare bones thing, and we need more. We need a more expansive sexual harassment policy because it was passed before this last wave of legislative laws regarding what happens when an employer does not enforce the policy. So my recommendation would be we take a look at it. There's no rush to do it because it does comply with the law, but we probably need to update it given that last year the state passed some significant sexual harassment legislation.
If that's the case, if sexual harassment is part of this section, then I would suggest that we do it now. I mean, I don't want to wait and then have to update an HR policy in 6 months because we now decided to update our sexual harassment policy. We should just go ahead and do it.
And I think Kathy and I talked about it, that the one in this document is actually more expansive. Not only sexual harassment, it's other types of harassment are also included.
Discrimination and
things like that. But as I told Kathy earlier today, that I wanted to go back and compare it. But that's what I wanted the board's opinion on, is if the one that's currently in the draft you like better, then we can keep that. But I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to see whether they wanted to keep the one that's currently passed or propose to keep the one that's currently in the draft.
It appears to me that it's covering the latest in the states, with especially speaking of retaliation, threatens. You know, it seems to have all the wording in it that.
Yeah, and I can take a look at it in the context of actual live situations that we will be confronting to see if it's sufficient.
Can you do that sometime by the weekend so we can get this on the agenda?
Yes.
Is there any other changes, though?
No, it's more like, can you add numbers? I had taken time to go through, because it was, and I put in Village Midlothian, and trustee Keaveney said, could we put village? And I think that's fine. I'm gonna ask the attorney, does that
Sure.
meet the spirit of the letter of the law by saying village
Yeah.
to mean Village of Midlothian?
Yeah, I don't know, like in section 1, if we have to put like definitions, or somewhere in here, if we have to put definitions that when we're referring to the village, where the reference to, any reference to village is meaning Village of Midlothian. And then the same thing, you know, how are we gonna define and refer to our staff? Are we gonna refer to like the management team as department heads? Should we call them out as department heads or superintendents, or chiefs, or,
Department heads.
you know, department heads and supervisors and that type of thing?
And for the board's benefit, our policy is primarily for notice. So employees have notice of what is expected of them, and they can't say that they weren't advised. The state law covers sexual harassment, and the village can certainly take action under the state law. What we want our policy to be is something that we can give to the employees so they know.
So where you have the yellow, like we talked about, the ethics officer is the village attorney,
Correct.
and we decided to, not use it.
We said ethics officer would probably be appropriate, and then recommendation from trustee Crowley was to give Attorney Valadez his own email through the village.
Yeah, I talked to him about that, and we decided he probably doesn't want to have 2 emails to
Okay.
confuse people. So it would just be, there was some terminology, but I forgot what you said, Nick. I meant to tell Kathy before this meeting. The terminology would be that is as appointed as the mayor, see the village, attorney for that
Yeah,
information.
yeah. And the only reason we wouldn't want to go to separate emails, because many things regarding the statute would require notice to the village, complaints to the village. And I don't want to have another email in between me as the ethics officer for someone
So
to
it's
send to.
specifically asking for an email or phone number, use your,
Yeah, oh yes, you could use mine, and it would be plugged into the policy.
Gotcha.
Just like it was in our contracts where they put the current village officers. Whenever there is a new village attorney or a new ethics officer, that would have to be just plugged back in.
Gotcha.
Mine would be taken off, and the new one would be plugged in.
gotcha.
Okay. Can I ask a question? In section 2.3, it discusses employment of relatives. Does the village currently have a policy about hiring relatives or not hiring
We
relatives?
do. We have a policy. I looked at it just a little while ago, and I like the wording of the policy we have.
Where is the, I didn't know we had that policy. Where is it?
It's, if you look on board docs, it's in the board.
And what, I didn't know we had it, so can you fill us in, what does it say? Do we have a no nepotism policy? Or do we allow employment of relatives?
Where there's not a conflict of interest, or where there's not a conflict of interest, and what's the other thing? I forget. See, I just read it, and I always forget.
Position
Yeah.
of supervisor.
Typically, they can't supervise an relative.
Right, they can't, or give the appearance of supervision, or there's a conflict of interest, or the appearance of
Do you want me to
conflict
read
of
it?
interest. Oh, yes, thank you.
A member of an employee's immediate family will be considered for employment by the village if the applicant possesses all the qualifications for employment. An immediate family member may not be hired, however, if the employment would, number 1, create a direct or indirect supervisor-subordinate relationship with a family member, or, number 2, create either an actual conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. These criteria also will be considered when assigning, transferring, or promoting an employee. For purposes of this policy, immediate family includes the employee's spouse, brother, sister, parents, children, stepchildren, father-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, and any other member of the employee's household.
Okay.
I like that
I
better
like that
than
one
what
better,
we have
yes.
here,
Yeah.
because
Definitely.
this one is, I think it puts, currently, I know we have, brothers that work here, and, it kind of limits, there's no conflict with them working together.
Yeah,
so-
this paragraph here is pretty
Yeah.
nothing.
Okay.
Right.
So then, I'm not sure how we would do this. How, I mean, obviously, we would delete all the language that's in section 2.3. Yeah, 2.3. So we would just delete 2.3 and substitute in our own policy? I mean, for the draft of this, is that how that would work?
Sure.
Take our current policy and plug it in under 2.3.
But do we have to include like any language in there, like subtext language that says that it was adopted by the board on this day or anything like that?
Generally, no. Again, our policies are primarily for notice, and so that there's no ambiguity. Our ordinances trump all of our policies. If the ordinance says we do it A and the policy says we do it B, then we do it A. There doesn't have to be that formality in the policies. Policies are designed to change quickly by a consensus of the board.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Can I just, I'm sorry I didn't do this timely manner, but in the sexual harassment and the area, that whole thing, it talks about disciplinary action. And it does, it says this disciplinary action may but not necessarily include. And I sort of would like to have the wording in there that discipline is not done in a step fashion, because a lot of the discipline we have is done in a step method.
Progressive,
Okay,
you're talking
a
about,
little too
you're
big.
talking about progressive, not progressive?
It's not step.
Right.
Right, I mean, you can do, it can go all the way down to immediate termination. It depends on what you did, I suppose. But I think just to put a little paragraph in there saying, look, watch out, this is in step. You may not get a second chance here, or whatever, I think that would be something that would be good.
And this, what we have in front of us does not say that?
It is number 3B5, I think.
Number 3B5.
I don't have a page number, I'm sorry.
B35? Let
Three.
me see what page
Here,
is it you're on.
See, I don't have it. Unless you know
Do you remember
where
what, well, just show me the
It's right here.
page it is.
Okay, applicable procedure,
Applicable
for bringing a
procedures.
complaint, and then resolution of complaint.
Okay, so it would be on PDF page number 6, Kathy.
Okay.
There's bringing a complaint. This is
Actually,
under,
Page 8. Page 8, once this investigation is completed, Village of Midlothian will take such action as appropriate based upon the information obtained in the investigation. In the event the Village of Midlothian finds merit in the charges made against an employee, disciplinary action will be taken against the offending employee. This disciplinary action may, but need not necessarily include.
If it makes Trustee Kelly feel better, you could probably take out may not necessarily include and just put may. That is the standard language. Whenever in a contract you're talking about discipline, adequate notice is given when you inform the employer a violation of this policy could result in termination. The part about but also may not is not really necessary.
So just say this disciplinary action may include A, B, C, D, E, F.
Correct.
But you were saying something about,
Well, it's just, they may
Progressive
read
step.
into it that it's a step discipline when it's not.
I gotcha.
I would hit them right in the head and say, any of these, I don't know what you would say, but you gotta sort of hit them in the head and say, I know everything, a lot of other things are step discipline, but in this case, no. It could be or it may not be.
You put language in, progressive discipline shall not apply to violations of this
Yeah,
provision.
something like that, if you could use, that would,
taking notes?
yep,
Say it again, out loud.
It would be,
This disciplinary action may include, no.
May include and take out may possibly include, and then also include progressive discipline may not apply.
Does
We're
does
at-
not,
Does
does
not,
not,
does not.
does not apply, not
We
may.
can always do progressive business.
Yes, yes, it's up to you, though, totally open-ended somehow,
So,
so.
saying that
you
it
could
doesn't
use
apply tells them that don't rely that it's a first-time offense.
Can you read that back?
And,
Can you read that back to me, please?
Are you serious?
No.
so, we got finished about testing procedures for employees and drug and alcohol, or is that what? Because I have a couple of comments on that.
Is that in this section?
Closer to the end, right?
Close to the end, which is
2.10?
Uh,
Oh, 2.9 and
2.10,
2.10?
2.10.
Oh, I asked trustee Crowley if she and Chief Delaney would take care of reading those and commenting on those.
I gave all my comments to Kathy.
Okay. The only thing I would say is that on some of these paragraphs, it talks about alcohol without cannabis, and I think they should always be together as far as impairments. One paragraph says, which I don't know how we know this, in addition to the prohibitions above, employees must not consume alcohol for 4 hours prior to duty time and up to 8 hours following an accident. Okay, so how do we know 4 hours is good? And it doesn't say anything in there about cannabis, it just says alcohol. So, I mean, I would read this and say, you know, anytime you're talking about any type of impairment, drugs, cannabis, alcohol, all it should be mentioned all the time.
And to that point, I did have a question with regards to cannabis. Now that cannabis use is legal, the difference between cannabis and alcohol is that cannabis stays in your system longer than alcohol does. And I don't know if there's a test, you know, like if somebody,
They measure it by nanograms now, it's not just the presence of it, it's by the concentration.
okay, so if somebody smoked a joint on Saturday, but they still have nanograms in their system on Monday morning, and at Monday morning at 10 o'clock, they had to submit to a random drug test.
So typically, you can either go by the standards of like police and fire, public works, community operated machinery. We've got a zero tolerance policy, so you better not have anything in your system. In the private sector, they go off of like IDOT regulations of there's a predetermined amount of nanograms that is allowed. And if you guys want that for your civilian employees, that's up to you. But they do measure it by nanograms.
But
I mean,
Very
because,
point that you said.
just in this paragraph, it says, don't consume alcohol for 4 hours before, which I don't know how we know that time, but the bottom, you know, it's not just, you're not talking about testing here, you're talking about just telling employees before they report for duty, 4 hours before, don't drink alcohol, and I think it should say something about,
So our measurement
Cannabis.
in the back as well is you can't have anything above a .02 in your system. Because you're right, 4 hours, depending on what your level was, your body
Right.
will purge so much per hour.
right,
So if you put that measurable in there as well, whatever your guys' predetermined amount is, you know, for obviously public safety purposes, ours has to be very low.
right,
It's up to you guys what you want. If you
Right.
guys notice that.
The chief is correct that what has changed since the cannabis has become legal is that it now relates to prohibitions against impairment, not on the use. Before,
Right.
we could fire them because they were using an illegal substance. Now it's a legal substance, now the focus has to be on impairment.
is somebody still considered impaired if, you know, if they have a little bit over the specified limit of nanograms? I don't know anything
That's
about
where
the
IDOT breaks it
nanogram
down as to how many nanograms,
Uh-huh.
or it would be considered that they used it relatively
recently.
recently and that they still would have some level of impairment in their system.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember exactly how many nanograms that is, because like I said, we have zero tolerance policy by us. But IDOT does already kind of lay that out if you want to follow those things.
Well,
Chief,
and
I also think there's a chart, and I don't know the numbers offhand, but something like that can be, the nanograms can be used to see if this was once a week. They could tell by like how much it's used also.
Oh, really? Like
Yes.
if they smoke every day?
Yes.
like,
Yeah, you could tell that also.
Versus just on the weekend?
Right.
Right.
So I think also too, the one thing, this policy is not really gonna directly impact our police, fire, or public works because they have a CBA and they have
Right.
different rules and regulations that apply to them. So this would be for our staff here that is
Non-union.
well, it's not even just union, but that they're not, they're administrative in nature or things like that.
So,
So it's going to be, a lot of these policies are going to be not, this is going to, the CBA and the general orders of each department are going to supersede these policies, which they're always, I haven't seen one that those are less restrictive, so they're
so,
always more restrictive.
so in the contracts, it doesn't say you can't violate the contract, I imagine, says you can't violate the law when you're doing this or that or whatever.
Correct, but then there's also general orders that, like the police department have, that are more restrictive than, than just what's in the CBA.
The new statute does provide some civil rights to individuals who use cannabis.
Right.
So I would have to check that to find what the parameters of that are. It was designed intentionally to keep employers from firing people, not saying police officer, first responders, that transportation,
Right.
fire, emergency
Yeah,
people.
that's covered in here.
It's a different category.
It's covered.
Right,
But there are rights to people to use
yes,
cannabis in Illinois.
But according to this, the state legislature has not determined a specific level of THC to constitute impairment. Is that still true?
I'll have to look into that, but certainly, the state, I thought the state did.
You have your own, the police have their own guideline. IDOT has.
Well, I think they determine a level for impairment for driving.
Yes.
I don't
Right.
know what
But
they
for
mean.
working,
Yeah,
I think that's
don't know
a,
if they determine anything for the local. That's why I said, I know IDOT has something in place.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people just defer to what IDOT does.
So back to you. It's,
I'm
you
just
wanted
saying a lot-
more than just, I couldn't even find the paragraph.
yeah. A lot of this that we talk about is, okay, employee, don't do this, we want to make sure you're not impaired, and here's how to prevent impairment, so, when we talk about it, I don't know how we know 4 hours exactly, but I guess that's a good shot at it. But I would say, how long after
but I
you-
think it also says, and not impaired, like you can't be impaired.
And not impaired, but I
You
mean,
can't be
you're trying
impaired.
you're trying to help them have a guideline, say, okay, if I drink alcohol, later, 6 hours, I should be fine. And I don't know how it works with cannabis either, but you're trying to help the employees say, okay, what's my general guideline? I'm off today and I'm at a party, when do I have to stop drinking? Or when do I have to stop using cannabis or something like that? I mean, a lot of this is, okay, let's help the employee with guidelines on how they prevent being impaired. And so I think a lot of this, and I don't know where this was, do I?
I can't find it.
I have no idea. Sorry. I printed this and the pages didn't come out, sorry.
It helps when we send people over for drug testing, it'll ask you, you want them to test on non-Department of Transportation standards or Department of Transportation standards. So those are usually the two that Ingles uses. Ours are all non-Department of Transportation because if there's any presence, they're gonna have a positive test. So what you want to do with the civilian staff is already kind of even set up with our clinic that we use for Department of Transportation standards.
Brings up another question. What, an employee is scheduled off, goes to a party, off the next day, goes to a party that night, but then is mandatory to come in? Is there some obligation for them to tell their supervisor that?
So, yeah, they'd have to disclose it. If for whatever reason they were too impaired to come in, then obviously we move on to the next person.
Okay.
But we also have a availability and fitness for duty expectation that if it was a reoccurring or habitual type thing, then we take disciplinary action that they don't ever maintain an availability to work.
And it's the same thing for the Public Works contract, that any employee who is on call saying that I was at a party drinking is not an excuse.
Right. But it's not just on call, it's, I'm
Right.
working the next day. I
No,
mean,
but the example
That's
was what
we-
happens
yeah.
when they're not working
Right,
and they're on call.
Right.
And they sit at home.
Yes.
Having a beer, smoking a
Yeah.
joint.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not an
Yeah.
excuse. but it's
So again,
on call.
I think the CBA's cover this pretty well. You're just asking for something a little bit more.
in here, and I guess I'm worried about the CBAs, are we up to date with that? I guess that's the thing. You know, Public Works, Fire, Police all have very responsible jobs, and it doesn't mean that they have to be driving. Fire can be in an ambulance. Public Works can work on machinery. There's a whole bunch of things that can go bad, that they can hurt themselves or others. So I'm just, you know, when we're negotiating contracts, I just would like us to be cognizant of the fact of reading all the little fine prints and making sure that a lot of this wording is in there in its form.
Well, I think our CBAs are more restrictive than what's in here.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, I know police is. This is less restrictive than the police departments.
Where's the paragraph you're talking about, trustee?
Okay,
I'm
so.
sure, I'm in the right section.
I don't even know where I am. Let's see.
It's 210 something.
Descriptions, okay, so I just looked at descriptions, and then we have another page past that, and
Yeah, there's intent.
another page past that.
Definitions.
And then it has legal drugs, drug panel, and then there's a paragraph, the second, well, wait, actually, the first paragraph or the second paragraph on the top would be what I'm talking about. So if you see something that says legal drugs or drug panel,
Yep.
then you look at that, it says employees who drive commercial vehicles, operate or repair heavy or large mobile equipment or perform other safety-sensitive functions, including, whatever, in addition to the prohibition, must not consume alcohol for 4 hours prior to duty time, and up to 8 hours following an accident or until the employee undergoes a post-accident test. But I do think,
One thing I caution with hours are.
Yes, yeah,
You can only
that's,
purge like .02 blood alcohol concentration per hour. So say they're at, they're double the, triple the limit. And they're only able to purge .08 in that time,
Right.
and they still come in, they're .16.
Right.
They're still pretty drunk,
right,
so.
So
I would-
it-
so it
depends on how much they
Certain
consume.
Hours, I would put it at whatever your level is, and that's.
Impairment, yeah.
Figure out how long it's gonna take
literally,
to get to that
legally,
acceptable
that provision could only be enforced if the employee admitted that they had consumed
Right.
it within 4 hours. or if
Exactly.
We had a litany of witnesses who said they had it, and that's not usually the case.
so we should take this out,
Absolutely.
okay.
And there's also, did you read K, the reasonable zero tolerance? It's also covered under here too.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. There it is.
But I would emphasize again that this policy is intended to be notice of the village's standards and requirements, not to be law, not to be, you know, extremely detailed with regard to provisions. That's what ordinances do. With a policy, you can discipline someone for being in violation of the policy and then have it out when they get their opportunity for their hearing.
thank you.
All right, so we take out the 4-hour thing for alcohol. Okay.
Are you kidding me?
All right. Anything else? Any other questions, comments?
So I'd like to propose that I'll make these changes. What is the wish of the board to review it one more time and approve it next week? Or have another discussion? Or put it on the consent agenda if I,
I think that was a pretty good discussion.
okay.
Let's not beat the dead horse.
All right, so then we're done with this part? Everyone's satisfied? Okay.
I am. Thank you.
Okay, and then my second thing, I just wanted to provide an update. A number of trustees and department heads came together last night to talk about the next steps in reorganizing the office space for the employees of the village. Currently, we are in need of more physical space for employees and elected officials to work. We are all in agreement that the space available is currently adequate, however, it needs to be reimagined to maximize its use. Over the last several months, each department has diligently worked to go through all the file cabinets to determine what files need to be kept and what files need to be emptied. We are now at a point where we would like to remove old file cabinets that are empty and/or in disrepair. We are in agreement that we want to open up the front office area to have a more look and feel of an open space concept to better serve the residents and customers that come to the Village Hall. The changes that we are thinking about are short-term and should not have a major impact on the village's financial well-being. We recognize that in about 24 months, with the completion of the new police station and the police department moving into its new building, the Village Hall property will afford us even more space to reimagine how each remaining department can utilize bigger and better space. This is where we see us using our financial resources to ensure our staffs are comfortable and have the necessary space and equipment to be successful and efficient as possible in their work. Our next steps are by January 18th, every department head needs to let me know how many file cabinets that they will need. By January 18th, every department head needs to let me know how many desks they need for their employees. I'm proposing by February 1st, based on this information, we can contact a company to remove the old file cabinets. I've spoken with a couple people so far that they will come and take it away for nothing, and there's other companies that will come, provide dumpsters, so to speak, and then provide us value based on, I'm sure, the tonnage or something like that for the file cabinets, but until we get a number, I can't really comment any more about that. And then we'd like to have a discussion by February 1st with Public Works to share our vision of the open space concept, to see how they can assist us in making this happen in terms of breaking down the partitions, building them in different places. Also, I'd like to thank everyone that stayed last night and helped us to reimagine what the space could look like by walking around the front office area. I think we have a plan, as we said last night. We can always change the plan from Plan A to Plan B, and I look at this as like paint. You can paint it once, you don't like it, you can paint it over again and get it to where you want. So I wanted to provide you this update that we're getting further along. We started this in September, and my goal is I hope to have this done by June. Any questions?
Outstanding. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's it.
That is it.
Trustee Ivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna stand up for my part.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys noticed, but there is another TV set up here, as well as this one here. They're now hardwire connected, potentially, with HDMI ports right here. Does anybody even know what HDMI port is? Okay, good. There's two, one for this one and one for this one. That is the most direct way to connect to these TVs and do your presentations. So typically, Alan, you have yours up here, but not today. So we must be having trouble with the transmission?
Chromecast, not available.
Okay. So the ideal situation is that we have Chromecast device on there, and we have one over here as well. The projector that is projected on the back screen. Right now, there is another HDMI cord wrapped around the top that can be unwound, okay, and connected here, so a training session can happen using the big screen, or if you got a demonstration or something, it can be happening there too. If you can envision it, what I eventually want to be able to do is that using Chromecast, the trustee at their desk could broadcast directly to this TV if they have like a document they wanted to show the board directly or something like that, or the crowd, they could do it that way. While Alan would have the agenda always up on this one. So right now we have to resolve our Wi-Fi transmission errors still.
I don't think there's any problem. I think everybody was able to connect now. They did put a new Wi-Fi thing here, and the bandwidth is being, I have the contract, I just want to compare it to the old contract, and we'll be opening that up too.
Okay, well then, if we've already updated our connections, it's not good enough because Alan wasn't able to connect to Chromecast.
Is it a Chromecast issue or
It's not a Wi-Fi issue.
It's not a
there's no
Wi-Fi
Chromecast.
issue.
just a Chromecast issue?
It's not broadcasting, the TV is available.
Well, if it doesn't show up on your Bluetooth as a device that you can select, then it is
It shows
a
up.
Chromecast. If you can't connect it to Chromecast, if you see it, then it is a Wi-Fi issue.
No device is found.
It did not find any device in the Bluetooth.
Correct.
All right. I'll look into it. Probably just has to be powered off and powered back on again.
So the two ports over there, they're for both, one's for one TV, one's for the other TV.
Correct.
Okay.
So that way, if you want, you could have somebody actually sitting over there using that section of the table where our two illustrious people are sitting right now, and they could do whatever they want to broadcast directly on that TV, with wire being the most reliable, obviously, versus our Wi-Fi connection or Bluetooth connection, which tends to have problems. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Nice job. Trustee Hilly?
Oh, well, New Year's Day, we had our first snowfall, in case you weren't in town. Public Works was out in full force. They dropped over 100 tons of road salt and logged 120 man-hours between Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. So they did a heck of a job, and I wanted to thank them and all the village departments, of course, because we know they're not the only ones out there. That's it.
Did a fantastic job, and I have noticed every day they're out doing crosswalks and clearing those as well, so that's, yeah, thank you.
Do you know if they happen to do the sidewalk in front of the rain garden? I haven't driven down Pulaski.
I did not go that way.
I didn't go that way either. I do not know.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Trustee Cavey?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I shared with the board Superintendent Weinert's email with regards to requesting that the board consider allowing the building department to hire a part-time staff person to help pick up the slack. And to support the request, Superintendent Weinert had given us a breakdown of a lot of the overtime that the building department staff has worked over the last 8 months to support his request. So I'm wondering if, we do have a part-time person that works in the building department right now, but she only works 10 hours a week. She's not interested in working more than that. And we still need to maintain that person so that we can finish the scanning project that we have going on right now. The administration department has been very helpful to the building department. They helped with scanning business license files about a month or two ago, and they got those all taken care of. So all of those documents are now, we can maintain those as paperless files for licensing for the business files, but we're still going through all the house files. Those still need to be finished up. And as those get completed, of course, then we can, continue to purge more file cabinets. But we do have, and the building department does have a need to hire somebody part-time on a more permanent basis and more than 10 hours a week.
Well, I know you and I had our conversation last night. I'll send you an email with some of my suggestions. I would like to see more, get some idea of exactly, where how we're getting the overtime, because one of my concerns is that the overtime isn't going to be taken care of based by this person, because a lot of the overtime is occurred because of moves court and things like that.
Well, they do have moves court, but that's only once a month for a couple of hours. The moves court doesn't account for a lot of these hours that are here. And, Nick did provide us with a list of, all of the various tasks that the building department staff takes care of. This person would be administrative in nature, and he provided us a list of 8 things that they take care of, as far as number of registered contractors they have to deal with, the number of permits that are issued, the inspections performed, and that type of thing. How many businesses we have in town that they keep track of, gaming terminals that they're keeping track of, that type of thing. Crime-free housing, plus Kathy's, Dvorak is gonna start rolling out the inspections. The residential inspections are gonna start.
I'd
Those are
be
gonna
more
start.
comfortable getting like some desk audits and see where, how much work each person has before we start. I mean, we could just, I'm just, without getting like concrete
But-
information.
Okay, well, what more concrete information do
So
you need
for
from here?
example-
Do you just want a desk audit from the building department or
No, I
from
could-
every clerk?
Well, that's something I think we all need to discuss. I think that just, I think that we need to figure out, we've done a lot of hiring over the last few years. I think we've increased, pay for people. We've put people in line with the areas of the jobs that they do. And I think we need to look at that before we just continue to hire more people across the board.
But
One
keep
of my
in mind,
concern-
the building
Let me finish.
department-
Let me finish. One of my concerns is, like, if we're saying we're gonna eliminate, a lot of overtime, that's great, because that's a budgetary, but just off the top of my head, if we have 4 people at Moves Court for 4 or 5 hours per month over 8 months, that's 260, that's 260 hours, right? 240, what is it? 4 people per Moves Court for 5 hours, that's 20 hours a month, times 8 months, that's 160 hours just in Moves Court. So that's still gonna be things that are gonna happen.
That's not
Right.
gonna go away. However, keep in mind, the building department, the only extra person the building department has hired in the last 4 years is the part-timer that works 10 hours a week. We've always had a staff of 4. We've always had 2 clerks. Since I've been a trustee, we've always had 2 clerks.
Wasn't one part-time?
One of them was part-time, and we've always had a building inspector that was full-time, and we had, I don't know, was Skip part-time or full-time?
We
I
had
don't-
one building inspector full-time. Now we have 2 full-time
But we
inspectors.
have one building inspector full-time, but we had a part-time code enforcement officer. So we've always had 4 people.
I've never seen a building department this big in this village. It's the biggest it's ever been. I mean, you're talking 4 full-timers, a superintendent, and a part-timer.
Right, but look at how much more work they're doing in the last 4 years. They've doubled their workload. They went from writing maybe 20 or 30 citations a month to writing triple that.
I don't have a problem, I just want to justify it, I want to look at it, I'd be more comfortable. I don't have a problem with giving people what they need to get their job done. I just want to make sure that we're looking at it from a standpoint of, do we need more people, or do we need to reevaluate the workload of staff and move that around before we start hiring more people? That's my concern. I don't want to have off balance, and I think that's important across the board, through all the
Okay, well,
departments.
Nick has provided us with the workload of his employees are right here. So if the other departments want to do desk audits for their clerical employees, and if there seem to be time where they can help with some administrative stuff, that's great. But I don't want this to drag on for 2 months. They are in need of having some help right now to get some of their workload done. And, I mean, does anybody else have any other comments?
So Kathy, we briefly talked about it, and I said that for administration, we helped you with that project a couple of weeks. It was great.
Right.
And I mentioned if there were other administrative tasks that are not building technical, perhaps we can help you out. And so what I hear you saying is everything that Nick has put down is very technical, but you're hiring an administrative person. I just don't know what that administrative person would do. And that's why I asked you last
Yeah,
night.
I don't know how technical all of these items are that are on here.
Well,
I mean, we would have to get more of that detail from Nick.
Right, and that's why I said if Nick's goal is truly administrative, what
I believe
what
he means
could-
administrative in the fact that it would be a part-time clerk position. It would not be an inspector position.
Correct, and, with Becky, she didn't do as much as you guys needed her to do, and that's one.
Well, she's doing what we hired her to do. She's not interested in working more hours.
Correct, and that's where we came in at the end of the year. We went through 4 file cabinets, 5 deep. As I said, our staff, I feel like right now, we probably have some capacity. We're happy to help.
Okay.
And I'm in agreement with Sandy that we need to, that's fine to do it for everybody. What's going on, because you may look busy, but are you efficient? And I'm supportive if it proves that they're blowing out the door and we need somebody. I'm happy to support that, but I want to make sure that, we're all treating everybody equally to say, is there capacity? And, we talked about it yesterday. Do people need to be cross-trained? Do people in one area, you can't have it, it's not my yab man. We're the village, and we all have to help each other. And if that means someone has to take on responsibility of scanning files, and that's not their department, but it helps the village in the long run, people have to step up.
Okay.
So this would be on top of the 4 full-timers, the seasonal and the superintendent? You wouldn't let the seasonal go?
What seasonal? Oh,
The seasonal that's been here for 2 years,
it would be in replacement of.
in replacement of? This personally is I don't get a vote on this, but I'm not convinced of the justification at this point, but it's up to the rest of you guys.
Okay, well, I mean, you can clearly see how many overtime hours they've logged. So, and it's not just, it's not just all moves court hours. So, and hopefully now that we have a more efficient moves court adjudicator, the moves courts will be moving more swiftly through and they won't be here for 5 or 6 hours.
Kathy, does those total overtime hours, does that include the temporary person you have now? I read it as it does, right?
I don't think so. I believe he was logging the overtime hours.
To justify the part-time admin person,
Wait.
since all the overtime is administrative and not field work, using data from mid-April to December, using overtime paid, comp time, and including Becky's 10 hours per week.
Right, he's including overtime paid. Becky never got paid overtime. He's talking about the overtime hours that were paid to the full-time employees.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else? Nothing?
Okay, well then, if you guys want to do desk audits, have your departments do desk audits to see what type of time they might have available, can we have those done in the next 2 weeks?
Can we have everybody do it, though? I think all departments need to do it. I mean, I think that's, we need to look across the board on all departments.
And also what Trustee Johnson said, the admin department has offered some resources to accommodate some type of admin work. I don't know.
They have, and I have been the one, I feel that department should be the administrators to the village. Because that's our role. But I want to make sure that we're being fair and equitable to every department.
Sure. All right, next step.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Trustee Kiley?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Crowley?
Just a couple things. I have on the agenda tonight the discussion of the purchase of our new firewall. Our firewall is dated and currently the version we have right now is set to expire on January 24th of this year. The total cost would be $3,584.60. And that I have confirmed with Proven allows for unlimited VPN access. So we wouldn't have to pay for additional VPN users. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or if no one has no questions, I'd like to put it on the consent agenda for next week. Next, Attorney Valadez and I talked last week, I think it was, about the new liquor license ordinance, and by next committee, we'll have something to look at, right?
Yes.
So we will have something for everyone to look at by the next committee meeting. So I'll try to get that out to everybody as soon as possible, because it's going to be lengthy, and I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about it, so I'll get that on to everybody's agenda as soon as possible. And then last, just kind of notification to everybody, we will be having, did you put it on the agenda for today, or is that for next week for the parade? Next
It'll
week?
be on next week for
Okay.
approval, yeah.
Next
I was
week,
gonna
we'll
mention
have on the agenda the approval of the board to submit the permits for the Independence Day Parade. Independence Day Parade this year will be June 25th, the last Saturday in June. I know Trustee Caveney is super excited to get involved in that again.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who would like to volunteer can certainly shoot me an email, and I'll add people to the volunteer lists. And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Attorney Valdez?
Just two items, both of them good news. The lawsuit against the Village of Midlothian filed by Mr. Maldonado regarding a false arrest. The time period, if you recall, all of the village defendants, the village itself, and a few of the officers had been dismissed with prejudice the last go-round. The court left one standing officer, which by the collective bargaining agreement, the village is responsible for defending. So that was our dog in the fight. Mr. Maldonado was given 30 days to file a new complaint. He failed to meet that deadline, so the village will be going in to dismiss that case. The judge did admonish him that this was the last time he was going to allow him more time. Second item is that I did send an email to everyone to make a 19-page decision concise. I will just present to you the
50 words.
operative language, and that is the four Spielberg requirements having been met, the respondent, being the village, motion to defer to the arbitrator's decision is granted. The recommended order, it is hereby ordered that the complaint be dismissed. So the complaint, the ULP filed against the village has been dismissed by an administrative law judge following up on the arbitrator's finding in favor of the village. That's all I have.
So my question is, the last paragraph, why don't they put that at the top?
You're just not supposed to read the first 19
Or
pages.
or when you get it, do you just thumb through to the bottom?
Yep.
Well, actually,
Because here I am reading
this one,
case versus case versus case versus case.
where the administrative law judge starts his analysis, he put his decision right in the first paragraph.
Right,
Which
right.
was
He did?
Yeah.
But it wasn't as clear.
It wasn't that clear.
It wasn't as clear.
No.
You really had to go to the bottom to read it.
Right.
The people, the fire department, do they have the right to appeal this?
They have the right.
What's the words?
It's called exceptions.
Exceptions.
They're called, administrative law judge for the Illinois Labor Relations Board is actually an administrative law judge for that agency. He makes a recommendation to the board. His recommendation that this complaint be dismissed. So the board, they may appeal to the board now to say disregard the decision of your own administrative law judge and find in our favor.
Odds?
They're even less than they had with the administrative law judge. So I would say, given the findings of the administrative law judge, which is that, hey, look, and it's the second time that the union has been told this, look, you didn't put on any evidence to show that the two plans are not substantially the same. So I don't know that the odds are great, but certainly they have the right to do that, and they have 30 days.
I think the other strong argument was the agreement says that we both agreed to arbitration, and the arbitration is binding, and that's in the agreement. So I thought that was pretty strong.
We strongly argued that in our brief. Our brief was to defer to the decision of the arbitrator, and that is within the labor board rules.
Can I ask a question? Between the arbitration and the ULP, how much did it cost the village an estimate to litigate this?
In my discussion with Maggie, she informed me that approximately the savings with this new plan, the two-tiered plan that was in controversy that was litigated, the village savings was $30,000. My estimate was probably that we spent about $15,000 defending it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Under my business, our annual dues for Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning is due. It is $558.28. I'll be looking for a motion. Well, I'm asking to have it put on the consent agenda next week. I just wanted to give a little excerpts from their email. Enclosed, dear President LaRue, enclosed with this letter is our invoice for dues for CMAP's fiscal year 2022. Your dues serve as a local funding match that enables our region to secure federal transportation dollars allocated to northeastern Illinois. We are grateful to the Village of Midlothian and our region's other municipalities, counties, and transit agencies for helping CMAP bring more resources to our region's communities. Regional's dues will continue to support critical planning across the region to help get the region back on track. Since 2016, CMAP has completed 282 local technical assistance plans, some here in Midlothian. Your local dues will continue to support assistance plans, but will also allow CMAP to leverage your local dues more as CMAP diversifies its topic areas to support greater needs for our member agencies. I'm in full support of this, and I don't think anyone on the board is against it. Just wanted to read the little excerpt there. So Maria, we could have this on the consent agenda for approval next week.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it possible for us to have a meeting with Jane Grover or ask her to come and give a quick, brief program to the village, telling us what programs and resources they have available to us?
Could you do that? What's the name you said?
It's on the bottom of the letter. So please contact Jane Grover.
Oh, not Aaron. Aaron's the executive director.
Yeah, Aaron's the executive director.
Yeah, that's fine. We circle that.
Also, Don. Oh, sorry, I digress. Do you have an update for us? Can you give us an update next week on South Suburban Land Bank?
The land bank, we finally did get the, my brain's gone. We finally did get the agreement between us and the land bank,
Okay.
right? Okay, we got that, so
Does
that's.
it have a new exhibit attached for what properties they are working on, or is there a list still? I mean, I know we haven't added any, we had to sign an
No, we
agreement with
haven't
them.
We haven't added any.
But
The-
were there any properties from the old list that should have transferred to the new list? Did the executive carpet building sell?
Yes, that's all. So I don't believe that we're working on them with any properties. The Honda building is the big question, and to qualify for abandonment, the South Suburban Land Bank wants us to find building violations in the Honda building, which I don't know if we can or not.
Why does it have to have violations?
Well,
It helps with the it helps with the abandonment.
right, it helps the
part of the
abandonment
ordinance.
process, right.
It's part of the ordinance,
Right.
the elements to
Right.
determine
We
it.
could, we
Okay.
could do one of two things. We can either try to pursue the former owner and see if they'll give us the deed or the deed in lieu and just abandon the property that way, or, like we tried to do for the
Well,
Kedzie Avenue property, we could try to do that.
when the village added the other buildings to the land bank list, how was the village able to determine or provide a list of violation, code
Yeah, he's talking about
violations if we can't get
if we
in
go
there?
for the abandonment process, they'd like to see code violations.
Right,
And-
but if we don't have access to the building, if we don't have keys to get in the building, how is that done? I mean, it was very easy for us to do that with the Kedzie Avenue property because
Right.
those were obvious. They had broken windows and there were
Trash.
numerous trash and outdoor things. How do we do that with this building? We don't have a key. Is the
And-
broken, did they still have the broken window out in front? Is there still a
believe
piece of
so.
plywood over it?
I think
Okay,
so.
well, there's
Without-
one violation.
Without access, yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, I always was under the impression that in order to go for abandonment through the land bank, it had to be abandoned for 2 years, which this has been, and it had to have back taxes, which this does have.
Right.
I don't recall that there was a rule of thumb that we also had to show that there were code violations.
That's the first thing that's the first letter that they sent to us. That, okay, let's get code violations, and so I don't know.
Okay, did you share that letter with with Superintendent Weinert?
Yes, yes. But maybe he didn't get the gist of it either. I have to
Well, if
remind
you
him
have a
about
copy,
that, because
could
he's
you-
only
could you
doing
share a
about
copy?
40 million other things.
Could you
Yes.
share a copy of that with us, please?
Yes. So, and again, we're supposed to have the attorney or maybe the executive director for the land bank, show up and tell us all about the process again. I don't know if that's a policy change or not, to be honest with you. It seems like it sort of could be. They're not going to, you know, if we want to buy this, if we want to get this property on a delinquent taxes, we can do that, but the land bank is not going to do that, according to what I know.
not
We
gonna
can
do
do
what?
over, we can do
Wait,
an
the
over
land
the
bank
co-
won't do what?
They won't try to get the property on delinquent taxes.
Only? Well, what about abandonment? It's been abandoned for over 2 years.
Abandonment they would. And
Well,
most
it's
of- And
abandoned.
most of the properties we've gotten are from abandonment.
Right,
Most of them.
right.
Or
And
some
this
some
is
we bought
abandoned.
too.
And this is abandoned, clearly, it has been for 10
Right,
years,
right.
if not more.
And they want building code violations, so when they go to court, if they have to go to court, they have something to say, well, the building is a danger to the community, is that right, Attorney Valdez? I think that's what they try to prove?
It's considered indicia of blight and a problem with the property.
Right,
That's why it's
right.
included. It's not required, but it helps.
Right.
It helps because it
Right.
shows that
Right.
it is also a public nuisance.
But as far as delinquent taxes, if we want to do that, which is a property or two we could look at doing, we're going to have to find the process of doing that and do that ourselves and do that an over-the-counter purchase. But a lot of the properties were either bought by the land bank or the houses were bought on the market from, foreclosures. A lot of the other properties were bought because the deed was handed over to the land bank, deed in lieu. The only one I could think of that was acquired was the nail salon as far as building regulations.
What about the executive carpet?
I didn't know anything about that, honestly. I presume that's what it was. They never handed over the deed, so I presume that's what it was, but
Well,
let's.
wait, I'm confused. Who never handed over the deed? The prior owner?
Executive,
Right, so the land
Yeah.
bank went to court and had to ask the court
right, in
Correct.
2017.
to give them
I believe.
the deed to the property.
Right. Right. I don't know what happened. So I think the best thing to do is to get somebody from the land bank to talk to us and say, okay, what do we have to do to acquire properties that are delinquent, abandoned, or if nothing's happened for a long time?
Get it from one person. We all hear the same
Right,
thing.
without us talking
Guessing.
like me.
All right.
Mayor, is it possible, could you re-forward to the board the list of tax delinquent properties that you had received from,
Treasurer Pappas?
yes,
You did?
Yes.
The recent one?
The
That
recent
wasn't,
ones, oh, I don't know.
that wasn't tax delinquent, that was the seniors that may be eligible.
That was just the seniors
Right.
that were delinquent.
I
Or
didn't
not
think it was-
delinquent,
I didn't
that
think it
may
was
be
seniors.
eligible for the exemption.
I still got the packet
okay,
information in there.
yeah. I recall that you had sent us a very teeny tiny printed
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet that had all of the commercial
Right.
businesses in town that had or the commercial properties in town, not businesses, I apologize. Commercial properties in town that had delinquent taxes because
Right.
Trustee Killily went through the list and sent us an email and recommended like 3 or 4 locations that we could possibly talk to the land bank about.
Sounds
I just-
good.
I don't seem to, I was trying to find that email the other day and I couldn't find it. If we could get that list again, we can go through it and see
Okay.
what we have.
I made a note.
Well, it would help if we could give that examples to the land bank when they came, they could tell us, okay, here's what the status is and here's what we can do or not do, so we know how this works. But remember, the Southland Development Association sort of basically took over and is managing the land bank and running the land bank, so, plus
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
oh, they're doing a great job. They have done spectacular work with financial. There's going to be a website that you can actually look at that's going to have properties. There's a lot of good things, happening there, so
So the website's not done yet?
I think it should be. They said 2 months ago that the website was coming up, so I think that'll be good.
Back to my business.
Sorry.
Yes.
A gentle reminder that I need all of the trustees' recommendations for their appointed positions on their committees. I'd like to get that done this month if we can. Trustee Caveney, I have Philip Powers is going to replace Trustee Johnson on the Plan Commission, but I will need 3 members for the zoning board. We're supposed to have 7.
So who is in charge of each committee now? Because I don't think I have a committee, so.
Sure. Safety? No.
Safety was combined
With
with.
CPC.
Yes.
I got the list on my desk. I forget.
Okay.
You're not getting away scot-free.
I don't want to.
Okay, good.
Can you send an email just as a gentle reminder?
Yes,
Thank you.
I can do that.
That'd be great.
I'll do it right now. And then lastly, Radiate Lodge. It's, Superintendent Sperry says absolutely not. We should not do anything more with it. It's the biggest money pit that we have. So I guess I'm just asking, is it okay with the board if we move forward with putting it up for sale?
Yep.
It's going to get worse. We don't have the staff to run a banquet hall, nor do I think we want to have a staff to run a banquet hall. Sad.
Does that property have a survey? First thing you
Yes.
need to do is have a survey.
We got 2 files on it, and
How much
the-
parking is attached to that building?
so
Legally?
that was the big issue. There was only the few spots on the north side of the building that is part of that PIN number, but we have a 99-year agreement with the Park District to have the rest of it going north to be used for Radiate Lodge. There's nothing in the agreement that says if ownership changes, the agreement's dead, so
What type of agreement do we have? Is it
a lease, a 99-year lease for all of the pins going north of Radiate Lodge,
So,
where the old house was.
so in this 99-year lease, the village is the landlord and the Park District is the tenant, and they're leasing that space from us.
Reverse that.
The other
Huh?
way around.
The other way
The
around.
Park District
There's a
actually,
99-year lease just for the parking, you mean?
Just for the parking.
the
Oh,
pins,
okay.
the pins north of Radiate Lodge,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is parking, to allow us to use that for Radiate Lodge.
Oh, so, all right, I misunderstood,
Yeah.
okay. So we've got a lease where the village is the tenant. Okay,
On the parking spots, yeah.
okay.
So,
All right. And when does it expire? Do you know how old the lease is? Are we like 10 or 15 or 20 years into the lease?
now we're still, 70 years or something, 60 years.
Okay.
It was 80, no,
I thought there was
it was 80 something,
years left.
83, 87.
Okay. So we would be selling the Radiate property with a leasehold interest in the parking for X amount of spots that are north of the Radiate
We'd have to
property.
see if that was transferable. whether that lease-
There's nothing in it that says it's not, but that's up to you guys to come up with 19 more pages to tell us it's transferable. I'm just kidding.
Maybe I'm incorrect in this. I also looked at the zoning map. Isn't
Yeah.
that zoned residential still? Where the actual property rate is on?
No, that's
No?
commercial,
Okay.
almost positive. Remember we had the issues with the residents on Kedzie, south of Radiate Lodge, that they're zoned commercial. According to our maps, that was always commercial, so we don't know how the houses got built there. We can
Okay.
double check. Good
Maybe I
point.
looked at old map though. I could have
That's a
swore
good point.
that that corner, the northwest
All right,
corner.
so no one's opposed to me
Wait,
working on moving forward.
I just got two questions, not
Yeah.
necessarily posing, but one is, does the Park District want it?
Well, of course they want it.
Do they
I
want
mean-
it?
Yeah, they want it.
But they want it for free. Do they want to pay for it?
But I mean, I don't know, okay. The other question I have is, a long time ago, I think trustee that I know, who was trustee Moscow back then, asked about there's gonna be a tollway exit on Kedzie eventually?
There was, yes, there was going to be,
Right.
until they found out that the gun range was there, and that got taken off the table. So it's
Okay.
only, what they're doing now is the final phase
Right,
of 57 and 294, and there's gonna be supposedly like a frontage road to Kedzie, but further south. The whole plan
further
is
south, oh, okay.
down in Markham.
Okay. Oh, the exit, okay.
So, yeah, that was on the table originally. That was how many years ago? But it got taken off because of the Chief Delaney and his gun range, which is now just a hole in the ground.
I would have sold it to him for $1.
But the gun range, well, the gun range actually is going to be in the new facility,
Police station.
right? So when we decide to sell it, there will be an appraisal, and then we'll decide what to do with it.
Right. So it'll be just like the old recycle center.
Right.
You have to get the appraisal. You have to put it out there for bids, or not bids. What do you call it? I don't know. What do we did for the recycle center? And you hope that you get what it's appraised for. But if only one bid comes in and it's under the appraised amount, then
Right,
they can have it. But
right.
I gotta feel it's worth something, right, on Kedzie, and I don't know. Gotta be worth something, right? It's my opinion, but
I'm in
I'm very
favor-
sad about it, actually, but
I'm in favor of disposing of the property.
Me too.
okay. And that's all I have. Dr. Moscow.
I have nothing tonight.
Thank you, sir. Seeing there's no further business coming before the board, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. All right.
Sandy
Sit down,
Crowley,
you guys.
thank you very much for all of our new laptops.
That's it.
You're
And
welcome.
Radiate Lodge.
for